I want to thank you so much for joining us today and welcome you into Aspire to Retire with Ralph Short, Tim Short, and Scott Arehart of Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find them online, welcomehomefp.com. And the phone number, 804-635-3550. Once again, the 804-635-3550, online, welcomehomefp.com. My name is Chris Vaughn. I'm pleased to be joined every episode with Ralph Short, Tim Short, and Scott Arehart. Gentlemen, glad to be with you. How are you doing?
We're doing good. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Chris.
You know, because here's the thing. People, they want to retire. Retirement is kind of the end goal, not necessarily the end of the story by any means. It's the start of the next chapter. But people, they want to know that they can retire. They want to make sure they can retire. And gosh, it seems like there are a lot of factors these days that really kind of call that into question. But I think sitting down and speaking with people like yourselves, it really helps instill that confidence and makes people feel a little bit better about their prospects. So before we dive into the meat of this episode here, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what the average person, when they walk through your door, what is their mindset going in?
Well, a lot of them are nervous. A lot of them are scared. They've never done this before. And that's one thing that we pride ourselves about is making people comfortable. Once you make them comfortable, it makes them understand. It helps develop a plan on both sides because this is not a one-sided thing. This is something that when folks come in, they need to realize that they have just as much in this as we do. So they've got to focus in on that. And being comfortable with somebody you've never met before is key to it.
Absolutely. Ralph has a great line that he uses all the time that you only retire for the first time once. And that's something we always need to be mindful of and make our clientele as comfortable as possible and make it not such a daunting task to talk about retirement.
But I also think they need to take responsibility for their retirement. They cannot rely on us to make it happen for them because they have to take responsibility. They have to do certain things to make sure that they're in a good position.
There are steps that need to be taken for sure. And I think people can come in occasionally and, you know, maybe they find out that they're set up well and they, stay the course. Maybe there's a couple of things that need to be done. Maybe there are a lot of things that need to be done, but it's better to find out about that sooner rather than later, just by coming in. Because I think a lot of people maybe feel like they're behind the eight ball, and so they're hesitant to come in because they're embarrassed about speaking with someone and find out that their ducks aren't in a row. But here's the thing. Even finding that out, you now know the steps that you need to take. And so let me ask you, the three of you together, how much combined experience do you guys have doing this?
Combined?
I know it's a math question.
Well, if we add Ralph in there, there's over 200 years worth of.
Right. I've been doing this since 1985. That tells you something.
I've been at this since 2008.
Okay.
And for me, it's 2014.
Okay, so now you put the math back on me. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We're good at that.
Over 60 years of combined industry experience just on the show alone. And as Ralph says, you only retire once. You only the goal is probably to only retire once. So why not turn to a team with over 60 years of combined experience, helping people retire and stay retired? Because regardless of what your dreams are, everyone's dreams are going to be different. The goal is to hopefully not have to unretire out of necessity, but by choice. And so they're here for you. But it's not just about income. That is a major factor, of course. It is about taxes, what you pay out to Uncle Sam and the relationship you have with them in retirement. The IRS has actually released the new tax brackets for 2024. And the bottom line is, thanks to inflation, it's weird to say thanks to inflation, but thanks to inflation, there's actually a 5.4% bump in income thresholds to reach each new bracket going into 2024. What does that mean exactly? It sounds good. I think it sounds good. Is it in fact good news? And what does it actually mean?
Well, I would think for most people, they need to understand that if their income has gone up by less than 5.4%, then that means that their tax bracket is going to stay the same this coming year. It's a good news at that point in time, but the thing that I always tell people, you have to understand one thing in retirement. You're not going to get away from paying taxes. It's not about your age or whether you're in retirement or not. And a lot of people think once they retire, they do not have to pay any taxes. It's always about income. How much you earn is how much taxes you're going to pay. And that's what the new tax brackets are telling you right now. You've got to jump in the amount of income that you can earn before you go into the next bracket.
Yeah, and I think it's so often overlooked. When people are working, they've got their taxes coming out of their paycheck. They don't pay any attention to it until it's tax time the following year, right? So that's something that you have to take a look at in retirement. because now you're doing your own paycheck, right? So you've got to make sure that you're paying your taxes. Somebody else is not taking care of that for you. So it's very important. And having a little bit of an increase in the bump up, if you will help a lot of Americans, which is good.
And I think one thing that we really focus in on is for our clients that are in retirement, how can we help them create different buckets or different pools of money that have different tax classifications to give them the ability to control their income tax a little bit. If we have different sources of income that have different tax classifications, you can a lot of times target what bracket you're comfortable being in and make sure that your distributions fit that bracket.
And there's another thing that I think people need to be aware of to look into, because yes, we are, as we're recording right now, putting a bow on 2023. 2024 is right around the corner. That's why we're talking about these new these bumps in the thresholds. 2025, the end of 2025, that is another thing that is going to happen. That is when current tax rates with that Trump put in during his administration, they're set to sunset, at which point the brackets are going to change again. And so perhaps this 5.4% bump, it's a way for people to look at maybe doing some conversions or finding ways to minimize the taxes, not just that they're going to pay on the year prior, because that is looking in the rearview mirror. When it comes to retirement, you want to be looking, through the windshield at a destination like that and figure out how to pay less in taxes for the 20, 30 years ahead, correct?
Absolutely. I actually had a conversation with a client 2-3 days ago, and we are looking at doing Roth conversions specifically for him to have tax-free income in retirement, and we are targeting getting those conversions completed before the brackets change. Now, we don't know what they're going to look like when the 2017 changes sunset, but I'm not real optimistic that it's going to be in our favor. Yeah, in our favor. Put it that way.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you're always going to pay your taxes, right? So whether it's now, whether it's later, the key is it's based off everybody's individual situation, right? So everybody talks about the sexy term of Roth conversions, and they don't really understand how it works. But a lot of times, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes it doesn't work out. It's all about the numbers. So there's different strategies that you can use, but it's very important to get the advice, because if you try to go about it solo, you could run into a lot of mistakes.
But I think a lot of people, they hear that word, Roth conversions, they don't understand it like Tim says, but they like knowing that they don't have to pay taxes when they pull it out of the Roth. So they don't realize that any money they convert, they're going to pay taxes up front.
Yes.
And that's when they start having cold feet and trying to figure out, is this good for them? And that's why we sit down with them and explain all this to them, because once you do it, you're out of luck, because that's done and you're going to pay taxes the following year. I can tell you an example. Had a widow came in. We were sitting down talking about our first meeting, and she was telling me that somebody had told her when her husband died a year after he retired to take his 401k and just cash it out and put it in her account. And I kind of looked at her and I said, did anybody, your advisor, tell you that was a problem, that you're going to pay taxes on it? And they said, no. The only thing that they were told is to go ahead and do it. And she said, I found out 3 years later that I had to pay taxes on what I did. And I just happened to ask, I said, well, how much was that account worth? She said $650,000.
Okay.
It's taken me 5 years to pay Uncle Sam and the IRS back on a payment plan. So that's why you need professional advice, just to understand the basic concept.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks nowadays that what they do is they just shovel all the money into a 401k or an IRA, right? So it's all pre-tax. And they don't realize that, hey, if I've got $1 million in my 401k, that $1 million is not all mine. Uncle Sam's got his hand out for a cut of that. So you got to pay attention to those things. And like Ralph's talking about, if you took your $1 million and you cashed it out for whatever reason, you're not going to have $1 million. So that's why tax strategy is very important for your retirement plan.
Think of your accounts kind of like as a small business, and you've got a business partner. His name is Uncle Sam, and he's been relatively silent through these years, but at one point he is going to want his fair share. Now, the rules in retirement when it comes to taxation, they're different. They're different than in the working world. There are more things you have to take into consideration. Think of it like the difference between college football and the NFL. There's marginal rules that are different, and not knowing the rules and how to use them to your advantage could be the difference between winning and losing. Is a bit dramatic. It's a bit over dramatic, but paying more in taxes is necessary. Here's the truth of it. paying more in taxes does not make you more patriotic. I've never once had to write a check to Uncle Sam in April and said, gosh, I feel so patriotic right now. It's really about, knowing the relationship with Uncle Sam, with the IRS, and being able to minimize that. Not saying not paying taxes. That's tax avoidance. That is illegal. We're not talking about that. We're talking about mitigating it, knowing the rules as they change, whether it is heading into 2024, whether it is going into 2026 when the tax rates right now, they change, and thus being $33 trillion in debt and that number increasing. If you think taxes are going to stay the same or go down, I hope you're right. I genuinely hope you're right. But if you have concerns about it and you want to make sure that you understand you're best prepared, the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, they're here for you. Just by listening to the show, just by listening to the podcast this week, you're showing that you're being serious about your retirement plan. The next step is, of course, putting pen to paper and figuring out how it's going to work for you in your favor. 804-635-3550 is the number. One more time, 804-635-3550. You can go online, welcomehomefp.com. If you're listening on your phone right now, there's a link right there in the podcast description. You can click on that. It'll take you to the website. You can set up a time to speak with them and start figuring out your personal numbers. Again, welcomehomefp.com. I want to thank you for joining us here on Aspire to Retire. Both you for listening, Ralph, Tim, and Scott, you guys as well. Thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.